I'm going to tell you a story. It might be about utopia, it might be about dystopia, but it's purely fictitious, so any likeness to any people or organisations that you know is purely coincidental and completely accidental. It's 2011 and we're tracking a day in the working life of Mildred James, who works for the Royal Loughborough Philharmonic Orchestra, or RLPO as it's commonly known. She works as their Executive Director of Engagement. Today, Mildred is feeling particularly reflective, and she is considering the way in which her job and the music sector has changed over the last few years. She's been interviewed on exactly these subjects on Skype TV, which is embedded in the RLPO's Facebook fan pages later this afternoon. The group contains about 50,000 members from all over the globe, so thinking about being seen by a big audience, Mildred remembered this morning to put her contact lenses in with augmented reality video screens built into them, a special birthday present to herself. She also packed a lipstick, which was still analogue. Getting back to her desk after lunch, Mildred touched her computer to wake it up from its enviro-friendly hibernation and said, "I'm back from lunch." Her computer recognised her voice and logged itself back onto her cloud, a place on the internet where all Mildred's digital data was stored and that any digital device could access. It updated her instant messages, friends feeds, news. She sighed, hearing an instant message from her fridge telling her that the smoked salmon had just gone out of date. That was going to be tonight's supper as well. Mildred decided to prepare for her interview. To remind herself of the RLPO's progress, Mildred accessed her Life Cache, a shareable digital timeline of her work, pictures, videos, calendars. Interestingly, on this day in 2008, Mildred had been at a consultation meeting to help the Arts Council make some recommendations to Ofcom about the purpose and shape of the licence fee and of public service broadcasting. Because of that consultation, in 2009, some really interesting changes happened. The old TV licence fee became a public media licence fee, which now pays for digital TV, film, video, and of course, relevant for the RLPO, music. The public media licence fee allows ubiquitous access for the public to digital stuff created by and for the public. Most people didn't even notice that they paid for it any longer, as it was collected as part of their monthly Vodafone or T-Mobile or whoever bills. It felt like free to them. Mildred remembered the very long board meeting where she had to explain that the RLPO weren't anymore going to sell individual copies of digital recordings of their archive or CD catalogue or live performances. Instead, they were going to take a share of the flat rate fee that the public paid and offer blanket licensed access to all their standard quality music and videoed content. Trying to control access to the RLPO's sound and visual digital assets had become really hard anyway. The powerful movement of digital natives had forced the old music industry into realising that music is for sharing and for networking, not for scarcity. Technical protection trying to control music hadn't worked. Pay to play put up barriers that digital natives had found ways round anyway. By 2009, 90% of the UK population had ended up being illegal from file sharing via BitTorrent and Bluetooth. DRM and protection and disconnecting people from services ended up being seen as ludicrous. The leaders in the music sector who could collaborate, and luckily Mildred was one of them, had realised that the way ahead was permission, not denial, sharing and not scarcity. It worked. It had been a brave step to take. Creators and users took back the control, and the result was an open and transparent and uncontrolled music ecosystem, not one which was closed and controlled. In 2008, 4 billion tunes were available for sale on iTunes. Now, in 2011, there were 400 billion songs for sale, many of which had niche market success. Goodbye to the dominance of hits. Hello to niche market success. That Chris Anderson and his long tail was right, thought Mildred, feeling smug that she'd read the book in 2006. Music became ephemeral in the networks. For the RLPO, they saw their music go from a place of digital scarcity to abundance. They were everywhere. Their classical music clips service in particular was popular. For example, the recording of the shower scene music from the film Psycho was synced in games, in user-generated films. It played as background music in some venues in 3D virtual worlds and in people's personal spaces in the 3D social networks. The RLPO had created it under a Creative Commons license, but giving it away for free had created masses of online discussion, audience participation with their other content, links back, and online PR. Mildred remembered explaining to the board that new success in the music industry was going to be built on merit, and she knew that the RLPO would do well because of the quality of their music and visual product. Consumers would pay with attention, she predicted. It meant being able to sell highly niche advertising and earn clickstream revenues from data mining and upselling. Mildred remembered arguing that she would also be able to sell valuable intangibles, even though it felt like the rest of their content was being given away for free. The RLPO's interpretation of pieces of music, the packaging, the priority access to fans and social network groups to conversations with the orchestra, the conductor, print-on-demand digitised sheet music from the RLPO's archives, the HD content that they provided as personalised web radio stations for people's Facebook spaces, as well as for their dining rooms and dinner parties. Of course, now it didn't matter if people shared this music, as it was covered legally and financially by the share of the flat-rate public media licence fee the RLPO received. The RLPO's HD binaural tracks were bought by classical music enthusiasts from across the globe, and their 5:1 stereo recordings were snapped up by ad agencies who, in particular, liked the short clips to accompany bumper ads that they made for short internet videos. Mildred was pulled out of her reminiscence by a ringing in her ears. She realised that she was receiving a video call through her augmented reality contact lenses. They'd got built-in video screens in the bottom right-hand corner that Mildred could see, at the same time as still being able to see everything else around her. The caller was Jim Hunk, classical music's favourite celeb blog J, and Mildred's old colleague, the ex-head of marketing at the RLPO. Jim was calling to prepare with Mildred for the Skype TV interview that he was going to do with her for the RLPO Facebook group. We've had 27,000 positive RSVPs to this event, Mildred, Jim said, and the content will be here forever and on the iPlayer for the next month, so we can expect a lot of activity over the next few weeks. Facebook called me this morning to say they'd given us a free banner ad on the homepage. That's worth about 150k's worth of media space, by the way, because they've recognised that their college grad user profile are aspiring to have more classical music in their lives. Good for us. It had been Mildred and Jim's wizard wheeze in 2010 to turn the successful RLPO blog into a new commercial venture, the new form of what used to be called a record label. The classical music sector was very interested, and this interview was an important piece of PR for them. Jim had been a great blogger, sharp, tuned in, hyper-networked and resourceful. Now, as a blog J, he used the RLPO blog as the primary attention channel. Yes, attention really is the new distribution in 2011, and dished up complete, interactive and highly relevant multimedia experiences that included TV shows, chats, webcasts and games. Forget about websites and browsers. The blog J's did it on all platforms and all devices. And forget about siloed art forms. Even classical music now had visual and game elements. This had demanded new collaboration and partnering skills. The RLPO really had become a porous organisation. Jim, as a blog J, attracted an influential, engaged and proactive audience. He'd done it by flouting his charismatic personality. Jim was like the digital version of analogue age radio personalities such as Classic FM's Simon Bates. Jim, as a charismatic blog J, also attracted highly targeted and loaded advertisers, steered by forward-looking chief marketing officers and next-generation creative agencies. These ads paid as much as £2 per click-through, with major brands sponsoring music blogs that fitted their exact brand vision. Hundreds of niche-obsessed blog J's had emerged, becoming trusted opinion providers that drew tens, if not hundreds of thousands of networked music fans who discovered new music this way, strictly by lifestyle, i.e. genre and sub-genre. No longer were audiences hungry for just any music provided that it was free. Now, audiences were hungry for relevance. This had served the RLPO blog well. Within 9 months of positioning himself as the classical blog J, Jim made his first signing of a hot new classical artist to an agency-type agreement. The talk, the interaction, the networking around the blog had catapulted a new violin star and the blog into major popularity. Well, for a niche market anyway. At the beginning of this year, Jim and Mildred had opened classical music spaces in 3 cities worldwide where their blog readers could meet in real life. Jim was off to the space in Blantyre, Malawi, to host a series of real performances and debate events next month. Gone was their Anglo-centric audience. With all this in mind as the context for their interview, which they knew would be picked up by the major news channels seconds later after they'd posted it, and settling down in front of her HD webcam, Mildred applied her analogue lipstick. She hurriedly turned her computer speakers down just before she went live. Her fridge had just sent her another loud instant message. "And your milk's gone off," it said.